Hello, I wanted to welcome you to the uh, team's discussion for this week. Unfortunately, I'm the only one here, which makes it rather boring. If you do have questions about lessons and different ideas that we're talking about in the class, it is a really good idea to at least reach out or try to contact me and get on to the team's meeting if you possibly can. If there are questions about previous modules or previous assignments, please let me know. I have had people at the end of the term say, like, this is 2 weeks before finals. Oh, there's too many things, and I have all these questions, and can we do alternate assignments? And those kinds of questions should be addressed throughout the term rather than right at the end. And one way to address those is to try and email me before our Teams meeting or to get on the Teams meeting and ask me directly. And I will try to answer those questions as best I can. There have been a couple people who have turned in assignments that were handwritten instead of typed. And when I just reminded them that we needed to have everything typed, they quickly went back and took care of that, which is great, and resubmitted assignments. When you do that, please email me and I will get on it right away. I have been grading. I hope to get caught up in the next few days. And if there's any questions or anything like that, remember that you can always resubmit everything and feel free to ask whatever questions you need to through email and stuff. But I prefer, before asking questions, go through the entire module, look at everything preceding the assignments and quizzes, and then see if that doesn't answer the questions before you actually need to email about them. One thing I do appreciate is that when there are discrepancies between assignments given and the rubric, you're pointing that out with me, and you've been very patient in helping me to find those discrepancies and edit them out as much as we can. And so thank you. Last week on our world tour, we talked about China and Japan, different kinds of painting. This week, we're going to do a little bit of painting as well, or you can use colored pencils or markers, whatever you have. But we're going to be doing something that deals with continent of Africa. One thing that is exciting to me about the continent of Africa, and also rather sad in the context of this class, is that there is a huge amount of cultural diversity on that continent. There are 54 countries on the continent. There is a greater human genetic diversity than every other continent on the planet. And there is an incredibly rich history. The oldest hominid fossils have been found in Africa. And latest thing that I read from the Human Genome Project is that the seven major strands of mitochondrial DNA are all traced back to the continent of Africa. That's where the roots are. And I remember there about 15 years ago, I think there was a huge magazine article that made national news that said that Eve had her origins in Africa because of that, which would not be surprising. There's over 14,000 languages that have been developed and invented and used on the continent of Africa. And as I said, there's incredibly rich cultural mix of histories on the continent. And of course, that's where the person we're exploring, Sundiata and the Mali Empire, have their roots. Now, there's came to my attention that module 4, I believe it is, where we first start talking about Sundiata. I had everybody go to a Metropolitan Museum of Art link, and that I just found out this last week. Several students told me that that link no longer works. So if you haven't gotten to the assignments there about Sundiata and exploring the equestrian rider, what I'm going to be doing in the meantime is trying to find a link that covers the same information. But if I don't, and if you want to get that assignment done, I would say do the best you can, explore the things that are there, maybe spend a little bit more time on them, but also look up Gene Equestrian Rider or Art of the Mali Kingdom, Art of the Mali Empire. on your own as well and see if you can find some other stuff too. And if you find what you think is a really good link, please send it to me and we'll see if we can replace the link that has failed. Now, this week, as we are looking at different art, we're going to look just at a couple different things. As I mentioned, it's kind of frustrating for me in a class like this because, not because of you guys are great, but with all that history on this continent, 54 different countries, countless tribal nations, countless heritages, we only have time to explore a teeny tiny little teeny bit. And what we're going to be looking at specifically, and for the project this week, is something called Kente Cloth, which is traditionally associated with the country of Ghana, which, if you remember from previous discussions, is also one of the countries that was part of the old Mali Empire. One of the things that I think is really, well, some of the things that I think are really fascinating about Kente Cloth, and this is one of the reasons why we're exploring it, is because you can tell stories with it. There, you can tell stories with the patterns, you can tell stories with the colors. And these colors and stories are pretty significantly linked to the tradition of the Kente cloth. And another thing that I think is very interesting is that we think of weaving as, in the history of the world, it seems like mostly women have done it. Mostly women have the fingers that are dexterous and strong enough to do the weaving. And it traditionally is an art that is linked to the divine feminine. What is fascinating to me is that in Ghana, the Kente cloth tradition, it's primarily men who are the designers and the weavers. What we're going to be doing this week, and this, of course, since nobody's with us on this call, it's just me for right now. What I'm going to be talking about a little bit is Kente cloth and the assignment about Kente cloth, as well as we have another assignment, which is brainstorming regarding the final project that we have. The final project is going to be building something that should have been in the old Mali Empire that was not. And you're going to be building it from something that is out of your own perspective, out of your own personal life, but that should have belonged in the Mali Empire. And so the bit of that assignment that we're going to be doing this week is brainstorming about what kinds of things that you can do. So those are the two things that we're going to be talking about. And if we're fortunate enough to be blessed with somebody else from the class joining the call, then we'll get some questions from them as well. Now, the Kente cloth tradition is absolutely fascinating to me. There are several different kinds of designs. And as soon, whether or not you know the name Kente or the association with the style of weaving, as soon as you start looking at these designs, you'll realize that this is a very strong tradition that we are aware of in our culture today. These are bold, dramatic, and graphic designs that are done in a style where there are generally blocks that have specific designs and color choices, and those blocks can be repeated in different patterns, and the blocks can also be cycled through. So, for example, say you decided to create a couple different designs for blocks, you can either repeat the design and in a multiple pattern, you can alternate them, you can rotate them around, you can reflect them. And what's fascinating to me is that the story of that block design is strong enough that you can still read that story if you're using the same colors. And that will make sense as you go in and look at the module. In the Kente cloth, I think there are so many different kinds of art traditions throughout the continent. And I think that the Kente cloth, kind of gravitating towards that because it's something that we can hold on to. And I think it's a little bit easier for our Western mind to understand context. And I think that this is a beautiful thing because it does tell a story. So what I would like you to do as you go through the elements of this module, when you get to the, where it's talking about Kente Cloth and you get to the studio assignment, what I want you to do is read through the entire thing first, think about it, let it set in your brain for a bit, and then go back over and do work with it. There are about 10 colors that we've picked out. These colors have specific meaning for the Kente Cloth use, but there's an awful lot of resonance with how other cultures use the same colors as well. And just as some examples, gold and yellow are colors that both represent royalty and wealth in the Kente Cloth tradition. Gold specifically deals with spiritual purity, and yellow also deals with holiness and is a symbol of preciousness. White is a color that's used to denote purity and healing. It's also a color linked with festivity. Blue is a color that resonates with peace, harmony, and love. Green in the Kente Cloth tradition, and it's a very strong green, or it can be a very bright green. This is a symbol of harvest, growth, and spiritual renewal. Red is a color associated with blood and strong connections and strong feelings, both political and spiritual. Maroon, or a deep purple, that's hints more towards red than blue purple. So the kind of that reddish purple represents earth, Mother Earth, or the divine, or the sacred feminine, as well as healing. That rich purple with a lot of blue in it also represents earth and healing, and it leans more towards femininity. And then black is, which I think is interesting. We usually associate in the West black with something dark or a little bit dangerous. Black in the Kente Cloth tradition represents maturity, and it also represents an awareness of our ancestors and where we're from. One of the reasons I think that's interesting is that in the alchemy tradition, black represents all possibility and infinite potential, which is again directly at odds with what Westerners typically associate black with. In horror films, the scenes are usually very dark and have a lot of black in them because we feel that's unknown. And I think it's fascinating that in the Kente Cloth tradition, black is such a positive color. For this assignment, what I want you to do is just spend some time looking around on the internet. You can do search phrases such as, how do I make Kente Cloth designs? Kente Cloth design meaning, design your own Kente Cloth, different things like that. I spent just a minute with the search term, make your own Kente Cloth designs. And I found on that a Pinterest page that is used by teachers in a classroom that showed 20 different examples of traditional Kente Cloth design blocks. And it included what their meanings are. So the geometric designs, as well as the colors, have specific meanings. And what I want you to do is look at that, look at the research, and figure out 3 different designs that kind of tell a story that's associated with you. And this doesn't have to be a narrative story. What these 3 different designs can be is essentially things that are important to you. What do you hold to be special? What do you cling to? And what you're going to do is just use the book that you've been using as your sketchbook. Draw 3 rough squares and just sketch 3 different designs that resonate with what you find online that feel like they're appropriate to you. And decide on the colors that you want to use that also mean something to you. Okay, so there's those 9 or 10 colors that I just mentioned, and all this is in the assignment. When you do this, when you get comfortable with your 3 different designs, and you may go through 8 or 9 of them, before you come down with 3. Get another piece of paper that's white, and you can use regular printer paper, and draw a grid of 22-inch squares. So that's 4 squares across the width of the paper and 5 squares down the length of the paper, which will make your grid 8 inches by 10 inches. Dividing that into 2-inch squares, you will get a total of 20 squares. Then I want you to decide how you're going to place your 3 favorite Kente design blocks that you've sketched out. And you want to make these as consistent as possible. One way you can do this is maybe alternate 2 of them down one column, pick one of those and a different one to alternate down the next one, and just do that. Or maybe you want to label the 3 designs that you've made, 1, 2, and 3, and just start plugging those numbers in across. So on the first row of 4, you'll do 1, 2, 3, 1. And the second row, you'll do 2, 3, 1, 2. And the third row, you'll do 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So you just go like that. And what you'll notice almost right away is that the designs will be repeating, and it will start looking like this, the Kente Cloth images that you found during your research. After you get that placed out so you're happy with it, it'll be a really good idea to either go over the lines again with a darker pencil or even pen, and then you can apply the colors that you've picked into those designs with markers or the paints that you already have, or colored pencils if you have them. Again, try the best you can to use whatever medium you already have on hand so you don't have to buy more. And after you do all that, you look again at what you found online, and I think you'll be really pleased with what you've made. After you do that and you're happy with it, take a picture of it, and then that image is what you're going to submit, along with 3 sentences that basically describe why you chose the colors you did, what the patterns you made mean to you, and how did the 3 blocks you designed transform when you plugged them into the grid and they started repeating. One of the things that's kind of magical about the Kente Cloth designs is as these simple designs, relatively simple designs, repeat, it starts building up a web or a network of images that becomes something that is much more magically complex than just the simple designs. And it looks much more interesting than what you would assume when you read the simple design is repeated. So that's the first part, or that's the studio assignment. The next thing that you're going to be doing is working on just brainstorming for your final project. This is important because your final project will be building something that should have existed in the Mali Kingdom but didn't. And there's a very specific thing that I want you to do. I want you to find something that comes specifically from your background and that is uniquely you. I want you to apply the critical thinking model that we've been working with that we call the tools of artistic critique. Remember, those 4 steps are describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. In the brainstorming section, what you're going to be doing is looking at a couple videos to remind you about who Sundiata was. And I think I just did one video, and then there's a map of the Mali Empire, but where the Mali Empire was. And then I want you to revisit one of the sites that we looked at, which is the Smart History site. First time we went there, you spent an hour researching. This time, I want you to just look at the site, find the things that resonate with you, and look at those a little bit closer. And that will help you kind of remember what this artwork looked like. After you do that, I want you to consider your own relationship to the world we live in. What are the interests, hobbies, and talents that you have or that you pursue that are uniquely yours? What are the things that interest you? What are the things that you really enjoy doing and making? And then think about that this is part of the brainstorming. You're going to write some of these things down. And I want you to think, could they have Oh, Sophia.
Oh,
Hi.
Sophia, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
I was
I was
pontificating,
pontificating,
and I almost
and I
didn't
almost didn't
notice that you had
notice
come
that you
on.
had come on.
Oh, I just came on like 5 seconds ago, so you're good.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.
Now,
Now,
you'll need to watch
you'll need
this
to
whole
watch
video
this whole
again.
video again.
Yeah.
Could you turn
Turn off your microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it was echoing, and although I do love hearing my own voice, hearing it twice in rapid succession, I imagine would be frustrating for other people as well. So I only want you to have to listen once. But if you wouldn't mind, after we're done here, if you would get back on and just watch the replay when it goes up, because I already talked about the first part of this next module. Have you had an opportunity to read any of the module material for this week?
Yes, I have.
All right,
All right.
great. Do you have any questions about it?
Not that I can think of right now.
Okay. I already spoke a little bit about Kente Cloth, and hopefully that's pretty clear between that and the module. But what I wanted to talk about right now is the brainstorming for the final project that we have. And the final project is creating something that looks like it belongs to the Mali Empire, but most likely did not exist. And you're going to be making it out of materials that you have at home that you already have access to. In this brainstorming thing, you're going to be looking at a couple different websites. One is a video, and one is revisiting one of the websites from Module 4. And you're going to be using the 4 tools of artistic critique that we've been talking about. Do you remember what those are, Sophia? They're the ones that start with. The first one is describe.
Sorry, can you repeat what you said?
Okay, do you remember what the 4 tools of artistic critique is or are? The first one is describe. Do you know what the second one is?
Oh boy, I can't remember.
The second one is analyze. And then the third one is interpret. And the last one is evaluate. It's those 4 steps. And as you prepare for your brainstorming session, I want you to go through, look at the video, look at the website that I have listed there, and just put that in your back of your mind. And then think about your own relationship with the world that you live in. You know, what are the things that make you uniquely you, your interests, hobbies, and talents, and the things that you enjoy doing. And then think about how much of that may have existed in the Mali Empire. And my suspicion is that not a lot of things that we do today are things that would be appearing in the Mali Empire. But what we're going to do is just pretend that they do. And some of those things might be furniture or a game or food, maybe clothing, maybe a specific kind of building. One person for this project built what they thought a refrigerator would look like in the Mali Empire. I've had people do make messenger bags. There was a leather worker who made a messenger bag as a project. And another person, several people are jewelry makers, and they've made jewelry. Whatever you might think of in your brainstorming that you want to make, also think about how a person might have made it with the tools that they had available in the Mali Empire. How would ingredients change, or textures or colors? For example, if it's something that's made out of clay, we looked at, do you remember the term for clay that we used back in Module 4?
No, I don't think so. I'd have to think about it.
Okay, the
Okay.
term for clay that we used in Module 4 was terracotta. And a lot of the examples of clay that we see that survived from the Mali Empire were red. So if you wanted to build something, say a cell phone case, you wanted it to look like it belonged to the Mali Empire, you could make the cell phone case out of salt clay that you dyed so that it looked like that particular shade of rusty orange that is specific to terracotta. And furniture, you're going to, instead of the fabrics that we use today, maybe you'd find a fabric that looks like it belongs from that period. Maybe it would be something that looks more like animal hide, for example. As you go through the websites that I've listed for this section, and there's, like I said, there's only 2, rather than imposing your own perspective on what you're saying, try to apply the tools of artistic critique to what you encounter and think in your mind, what are the things specific to the artistic detail that you see in the Mali Empire? You know, what are some of the specific traits that you see in the equestrian rider sculptures, for example? One of those traits might be that the limbs of the people or the person or the horse are more like tubes rather than anatomically mirroring what's there in real life. As you have all this in your head, I want you to sit down with your notebook, your sketchbook, or anything like that, and start brainstorming. Spend an hour brainstorming and writing down your thoughts. So what kinds of things could you make? What kinds of things would you be interested in making? What kind of materials could you use? How could you make the material look like it belonged in a world 700 years ago? Would this be full scale or would it be a model? Is it architecture that you're thinking about? Is it trying to make some clothing that you like? Would you make a sculpture or a painting or a drawing of something? Would you make an item that can actually be used in today's world? Or are you making something that people would wear as decoration? You know, maybe think about what would a cowboy hat look like if it was invented in the Mali Empire? So when you are doing this, what I want you to do after you're done brainstorming, and you can include friends, family members, roommates in your brainstorming as well, just bounce ideas off. But after you're done with an hour of doing this, what I would like you to do is sit down, look at your notes, whatever written ones there are, and type them out. The reason why I want you to type them out is that will make them go through your brain again, and that can also help to generate new thoughts. But how you'll submit this is you'll take photos of the scribbles or sketches that you've drawn during your brainstorming. You'll submit the typed notes that you've done during your brainstorming. So you're probably scribbling your notes with a pen or a pencil, and then after you're done with the hour of brainstorming, you'll type the notes up. They don't have to necessarily make a lot of sense, but I just want you to process them again through your brain through the process of typing. And then what I want you to do is spend with about 75 words, type out what you think you're going to build and try to describe it. Now, again, this is evidence of brainstorming. It doesn't have to be completely clean. It doesn't have to be completely finished, but it does need to show evidence that you are thinking about this and seeing if you can come up with different ideas and different processes for doing this. Hopefully it'll make more sense when you get to it, but does that process of brainstorming seem like something, I mean, does that sound like it is plausible? Do you understand what I'm looking for?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Now I have had in previous classes, somebody said, well, I want to rebuild or build a model of my child at home in Wyoming. And that doesn't quite fit, but how we could twist it so that it does fit for the purposes of this is if you have a favorite home that you like visiting or that you remember, think about recreating it with materials that you would find in the Mali Empire, in one of these countries that we're looking at, like the Ivory Coast or Ghana, from that time period, 700 years ago, where they didn't have aluminum and they didn't have mass-made nails, and they didn't have electric screwdrivers. How would that change the layout of the home? Or how would that change how the home looks? Because again, you're working with more natural materials rather than things like processed enamels for painting, for example. And if it's a computer that you want to build, how would the computer look like if it was made in the Mali Empire? One of the students was a nursing student, and she made a stethoscope, but she made the stethoscope using materials that she thought that you would find 700 years ago in the Mali Empire, and she was able to get it so that it worked, which I thought was absolutely incredibly cool. So there's lots of different kinds of things to do. But again, this is brainstorming, and what you turn in is evidence of brainstorming. You are not creating a final product. Does that make sense, Sophia?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, great, excellent. All right, well, that is about the whole thing for this week. You missed all the really, truly exciting stuff when I was talking about Kente Cloth, but you can go back and rewatch that. And I am very glad that you were able to show up. Do you have any questions about any of the things that you've seen so far, or any of the things that we've done so far?
No, I just had that one question about the one assignment that we did. I was just kind of confused on it, but I've been understanding the rest, so.
Okay. All right. Were you able to get your questions answered? Was I able to clarify that for you?
Yeah, I did submit that assignment after you explained it to me a little better, so.
Okay. Excellent. Great. This week, I'm also going to be trying to catch up on grading again and try to get that all done by this weekend. I thought I'd be able to get it done by last weekend, but that did not happen. Unfortunately, the universe conspired against me, but we will try to make that happen for this weekend. I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope that everybody that listens to this, I hope your questions are answered. Once again, if you have questions about assignments, make sure that you've gone through the whole module, and hopefully that answers some of them. But if not, please email me. Sophia was able to had some questions about an assignment, and we were able to clarify it through email. So we'll try to do that. If several people send me the same kinds of emails, then I will address the question on our next meeting together. But other than that, I hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful weekend, and I look forward to next week's meeting. I think next week's module, we are going to be talking about the Italian Renaissance, which is really exciting to me. The Italian Renaissance really changed the nature of art as we understand it, and also changed our perspective of what we expect to see in art. So that'll be a kind of a fun week next week. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys come up in your brainstorming sessions, as well as what you come up with your designs with the Kente Cloth. So if there's no other questions, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful weekend, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on.